Today, in Tales from Behind the DM Screen, I dare you to play D&D without magic.
Here's what I do. Here's what I find me. Here's what they find me. Here's it's awesome.
Alright, so you might be saying, how do you play D&D without magic? Now, notice, I said D&D. The reason why I said D&D is because there are tons of other role-playing systems out there presently that take magic out of the equation. What they do then, in most cases with these games, is that they replace magic with another set of abilities or system or process that will allow the players to still do supernatural things, to achieve great feats that normally they would not be able to do. There's something to be said, to the fact that, most role-playing is in itself an exploration of power fantasies. They are just the ability to say and do things that we normally would never be able to do. There's tons of other role-playing games out there, however, that have nothing to do with that, that are very based in reality. These tend to be towards more narrative, shared experience type role-playing games, which are really fun, but they are not the focus of this particular video. Also, I should mention there are tons of low fantasy role-playing games out there. Some of them even have the names. Like here we have Low Fantasy Gaming, which is a fantastic system. If you are interested in trying to find an alternative for a more gritty, a more dark role-playing game system, I'd strongly suggest checking this out. You can get copies on Drive-Thru RPG, and I think through Pickpocket Press as well, who is the publisher of this. Notice it says low fantasy. I will say I'm not doing a review of this, but it says there's a surprising a lot of fantasy. There's a surprising lot of magic in this, but it doesn't say low magic. It just says low fantasy. But anyway, regardless. So where am I going with this? This is going to be 2 parts, and I hope this won't be as long as some of the other ones that I've done. I know I had a pretty long one the last time I did one of these videos. What I'm focusing on here is one part a story, and the second part is what you can gain as both the game master and as a player in a campaign that just absconds with magic. Now, so my story is this. Way back in the day, and I've talked about the fact that my group uses a homebrew system. We have rules. That isn't to say we haven't played D&D. We played every iteration of D&D, from way back to White Box on through to the 5e that we have now. And we played both Pathfinders, and we played a great deal of other RPGs as well. But we created our own rule system, and it was called ED&D first, which was called Enhanced D&D is what we called it. It got changed to Code U at some point in the 90s, and then in the late 90s it got changed to a name called just Fantasy, which was just a rather generic term, and it's evolved over the course of the many decades that we've used it. What I am going to go back to, I'm kind of going back to Fantasy, which would have been in the mid to late 90s, the iteration of our role-playing system. We played an entire campaign that had no magic. Now, that doesn't say that, it was... I shouldn't say no magic. There were sprinkles of magic in the game. However, magic was largely and mostly just inaccessible to the players. It was the domain of the game master. My friend Jason ran the campaign, and this was more of a... Well, this is weird. It was a playtest, And by playtest, I mean we played a campaign that lasted over a year, and with the idea that we were playtesting the system. It had no magic in it, basically because we had every intention of having a magic system within the game fantasy, but it just hadn't been written yet. And I think my AD&D campaign wrapped up around that time, or somewhere around that time. And then we still wanted to play, and then Jason was up next to run a game, and he was like, well, I'm going to run fantasy. And then eventually he said he was going to insert the magic rules into the game as it progressed. And that never happened. We ended up, long story short, we ended up actually ditching fantasy because a lot of the players, myself included, we broke the system that we were using. We made characters that were able to just kind of debilitate it and change it. So we dropped fantasy and then went back to a more ED&D version. These names mean absolutely nothing to you, but long story short, ED&D was more classically based on D&D as a whole, whereas fantasy was kind of a real break for us. The biggest thing about fantasy was it was a D100 system, and we had, I think, 8 stats, if I remember correctly, and there was just a bunch of stuff that we were doing. Regardless, this ended up being, I think, the only fantasy campaign we ever ran. We might have run a smaller one at some point. I think my friend Shad ran it, but I don't remember exactly. Regardless, so when we ran this fantasy campaign, we were just normal people going on an adventure. We all had our different stories and different backgrounds and different purposes for what we were doing. My character was a captain of the guard of this city. I had a big giant axe. I think I was reading a lot of the Myth series, Robert Lynn Asprin at that time, and I actually I kind of based him on, I think it's General Bad Axe is I think the name in the of the captain of the guard in the Myth series, if I'm wrong. But I kind of based the idea on that, and I just basically decided I was just gonna make him very regimented, very military, and just focus on the whole, just turning him into a death dealing machine, and using the system to do it. And I ended up breaking the system, but anyway, spiraling backwards. The other players had different things. One character made a diplomat. Another person made basically kind of a monk / sword master type of character. Another person made a religious / remember, no healing powers ever. Another character made a religious / scholar character. We were just kind of exploring different ideas and going to explore. And Jason does a really good job of running a game that allows other people to shine. I mean, there's definitely, yes, hey, we got to fight these bandits, so the guy with the giant axe is going to do really well. But there are also things where political intrigue and things like that having that scholar or having that religious figure or whatever was really helpful and actually spurred the campaign along by using it. So it was one of those things where everybody got their moments of cool, if you will. The biggest thing is that as we progressed through the game, the idea is that the magic was gone from the world. I mean, kind of a trope, admittedly, but in this world, the magic was gone. And we were kind of watching as this world was just kind of, these crazy things were happening. Not only was magic gone, but the gods were gone. And we were watching as this world was just kind of evolving and changing and being becoming something else, and this massive empire that I was a captain of the guard in the capital city, it was being besieged and eventually fell and from these barbarians from the north, and there was these secret like demon worshipping cults, which sure they worshipped these demons, but they weren't real, those sorts of things. And we had all these kind of like progressions where we eventually like we started finding little hints of magic, and they were like given out in little tiny crumbs by Jason. And we eventually started like I remember the diplomat character was this person that I think he actually created, my friend Chad, he actually created a character basically based on the mentats of Dune, like just really, really high intelligence, just figuring things out. And he got this puzzle box that he was able to like mess with and play with. And he was able to figure out how he could teleport us using that. And so like these little tiny magic items, and because he was able to teleport us, he was able to take us to these different places where we were finding these ancient tablets. And as we were going, like as we found these ancient tablets, we thought that like the runes on them were important, like they're going to teach us magic. But no, the runes actually had these small little like pieces of this key in each one. We had to smash the tablets. We learned that we had to smash the tablets and get the keys out of them. It was a really, really, really fantastic. And there's just a quick story. There was like this moment where like we knew we had to get one of these tablets, and we walked into, because it was a kind of a city-based adventure for a long time, and we walked into like kind of like this castle parlor / exhibition area, and one of these tablets that we're looking for was just sitting there. It was just sitting on this it was on display as like this archaeological find, and people were coming in and observing it and like, that's really neat, that's really interesting, and they'd walk away, and we were like looking around, and it's like we knew we wanted this thing, and it was just kind of like a curiosity to these people. And I remember my character just said, well, is anybody watching us right now? And it's like, no, they're just kind of milling about. And I was just like, okay. I take out a big sack and I climb over the rope. There's like basically like it wasn't in glass or anything. It was just roped off. I climb over the rope and I grab the tablet. I'm going to put it in the sack and I'm going to leave. And he's like, all right, yeah, you leave. We were like, okay, and it was like I always remember that. It was just like one of those things where it was like we thought there'd be all these guards and traps and what have you, but no, just like, because the people that had it didn't realize it was valuable. It was just like, oh, hey, check out this cool thing, who cares, but they didn't realize what they had. So what happened was we slowly got these little different magic items, and it was neat. It was like cool that like we got these things that we didn't really know what they did, and we had to investigate them and find like ancient scrolls that taught us about it. And the long story short was basically the reason the gods were gone was because magic was gone, because the gods were linked into magic, and the gods are actually walking the earth. And we actually started meeting them, and they were just these weird people that we didn't, and we were having interactions with them, and we were like learning that they didn't want magic to exist, but they also realized they couldn't exist without magic, because what happened was ages ago, this is a long story, I apologize, but ages ago, and you can use this for a campaign if you want, ages ago, the reason why magic left was because the people became so proficient in using magic that they had no use for gods. And so the gods actually came down to earth and eradicated everybody that had ability to magic, eradicated magic in general, but then they realized their mistake. And so they were trying to reintroduce magic slowly and try to keep a hold on it, and it was a very fun campaign. I remember there was tons of things that happened. It had wonderful villains. Each person had kind of a person they despised. The final battle, my character like always had a superior. This person that he absolutely hated. And Jason was able to just keep this person always one step ahead of me, until we finally came to the final showdown. And and yeah, this guy named Armand. I remember when I finally killed him. It was very pleasing. I was very happy when that happened. But anyway, regardless, let that be a lesson to you. Don't let the players torment players with evil NPCs, but don't let them kill them. Let them live, let them prosper, and just because the cathartic release of actually finally defeating them is great joy to the players. But anyway, I'm getting off topic as always. So the low magic, the fact that we never really cast spells, we never did anything, what that did for us was a few things. One, it really inspired us to come up with solutions to problems that normally we wouldn't be able to do. I remember we had to bust somebody out of prison once, and because we didn't have magic, we couldn't just teleport in, teleport out. We had to come up with this way to get in, to infiltrate the prison, to find the person that we were looking for, and then of course, like we couldn't find a key to get their cell open. So we actually the Mentat character actually had to use his knowledge of like physics and things like that to create a way to like bust open the door. It was fun. It was an interesting way to handle these things. It wasn't just like, oh, I cast Stone Shape, there you can go. You know, I mean, it was like we actually had to think for ourselves. What it also did was it allowed the Jason, the dungeon master, it allowed him to really put the fear of magic into us. There's a couple of signature moments when we were playing. I remember that there was one where we were I remember somebody had a spyglass, or the scholar did, and they were like looking at like this battle that was going on, and like watching the battle, you know. And I remember I was like, and I said, can I use the spyglass? Because I was trying to see if Armand was there, right? And he let me use the spyglass. I remember I was looking through the spyglass, and I surveyed, and then I finally found, I saw Armand, and he was standing astride his horse, and he was sitting there, and he was watching this battle, and he was giving orders to this person who was raising these different flags, you know, at different times, you know, to give orders to the battle. And at this point, he had betrayed the Empire, and so I was trying to track him down to kill him. And next to him was this huge dog, basically this war dog right next to him. And I was like sitting there, I was watching him, and then Jason said, you know, it's like, and as you're watching this unfold in front of you. At one point, you see Armand, and he turns and looks at the dog, and he says something, and you think he's like, you know, giving the dog oh, you know, go, but it's like he says something, and then he said the dog turns and looks at Armand, and stands up, and walks away, like he walks down into the battle, right? And I was like, oh, what? It's a dog, you know. It's not supposed to walk around. It was like a creature. At this point, like the only things we had fought were humans. And I was like, what is that thing? You know, and it was just like, I was like, I look for it in the battle. It's like, oh, once it enters the battle, you just, you lose track of it, of course. You know, just to, you know, like Jason's very good at that. He gives you this little tiny morsel, and then like you can't follow up on it. You know, so just like until later we ran into these dog creatures, and they were tough. They were really powerful. But another instance of that was we had to. Jason likes to create, and other DMs do this too, and you should do this, but Jason loves to create things against type for his campaigns. So he actually, in this world, the gnomes were like sea gnomes. They were pirates. They were like they had these fantastic giant mechanical ships, you know, because there's no magic. People had to create things, right? And the gnomes had these amazing ships, and we had to travel, and we had these keys, and we didn't know what they did yet, but everybody wanted them, and so we were like dealing with all kinds of people coming up and trying to kill us all the time, and so we were on this boat, and in the dead of night we're like looking, and we see this this ship come out of the fog, come out of the darkness, right? And it's huge. It's just giant, and it's this giant gnome ship, right? And it's got ballistas and catapults and things like that. But they don't want to sink us because they want to get on board and they want to find us and take these keys. And if they sink the ship, there's a good chance they fall in the water and they never get them back. So they don't let loose with their Greek fire and all the other things, right? So they approach, and we're watching just like, and we're trying to get away, but this thing is just faster than us. It's just better than us. And so we retreated down into the hold, and I remember, and I was sitting there and like basically get down a hallway, create a pinch point, and I'm just standing there. I'm standing there down this hallway, and I'm waiting, and I hear, and everybody's behind me, and we're just sitting there and we're waiting, and I remember there was this assassin character that my friend Phil played, and he had these like 2 edged swords, and he's like right next to me. So it was like we always fought together. This big, huge guy with an axe and this short guy with these 2 swords, and we're waiting. And we're just sitting there, we're waiting. We're looking down this hallway, and we hear smashing and screams and all these things, and we're like, "What's going on?" And all of a sudden, we like all of a sudden like this like smell of seawater hits us, and these 2 giant clawed feet, I mean like giant clawed feet, like where are the gnomes, right, come stomping down the stairs into the hold. And it's like basically like a giant shark man, and like just, you know, like razor sharp teeth, big giant fangs, you know, just like, you know, big giant claws, and it's just like, and it can barely fit down the hallway. It's so big. And Jason's just describing it's like it's just clawing down the hallway, and it's like looking directly at us. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, you know, we're gonna do this, you know. And I was like, oh geez, this is gonna suck. And I remember like I was like, and he put enough fear into Artemis was my captain's name. I finally was like, you know what, screw this. I slammed the door, I blocked it, I said, we need to get out of here, like this isn't gonna work. And I remember we were fighting, and it was like kind of like this is kind of a deep cut, but it was kind of like Castle Cagliostro, where we were all like standing, like all of a sudden the smashing stopped, and we were all just like standing next to the door, like waiting. And there's like this like silence and just the creaking of boards and things, and maybe the screams up above of people that were dying, and we're just lying there, and we're waiting, and all of a sudden just boom, it smashes through the wall, and we have to fight this giant shark creature. You know, it was just a great moment. But here again was because this was just a creature, and it wasn't what I was used to fighting. Like, it was just, oh, it's another human, I can just chop him in half with my axe and we can move on, that kind of thing. It just wasn't, I mean, it put a certain level of fear and doubt, and that was because Magic was completely foreign and unreal. And so it made the game a lot of fun. So what is the whole point of this video? Why am I daring you to play without Magic? Well, first of all, I understand it's going to be a couple things. It's going to be a tough sell. If you tell your players, hey, we're going to play this game, it's not going to have Magic, they're going to be like, what? You know, so it's going to be very difficult to convince people that they're going to play this without. 2, certain editions of D&D just probably won't work well, and I'm talking about most of them. I mean, you could say, okay, 5e, you know, just don't use wizards and clerics and warlocks. You know, don't use these character classes that have magic, right? And only allow the others. And you might have to go into some of the other characters and like adjust them in some way, because some of their abilities will facilitate themselves as almost supernatural and almost magical type abilities. But it's not impossible. It is way more possible. 1, if I had a copy of the old fantasy rules, I could just send them to you, but I have no idea what ever happened to them. 2, like if you go back to like really early D&D, if you go back to AD&D, or even not, you can't really go to Beckney. That just won't work. But if you go back to OD&D, or if you like dive into some of the old OSR clones, you can easily replicate a non-magic type of situation. I mean, like, if you want to put the effort into Pathfinder or 5e, you can do it. It's easy enough, but like I said, it's more going to be convincing the players that this is something you do. Now, what do you have to gain from this? Well, one, for example, if you're a fan of like Game of Thrones and other like fantasy type of settings that aren't, you know, Forgotten Realms or Faerun or any of those things, any of the more classic tons of fantasy things out there, if you're and you've always wanted to play in a world like that, that's how you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to make magic a incredibly rare and dangerous and treasured thing that players can aspire to have some sort of aspect of, but can never really fully, you know, enjoy it or you know, like use it to the fullest extent. It also lends itself to a more gritty world, and so if you want to do that, I would strongly suggest taking a dive into true medieval life. Orbis Mundi is a group of books that are written by a historian about playing D&D in a more real setting. You can find those on Drive-Thru RPG as well. Good stuff. But the benefits of it are, you are going to make, one, as a dungeon master, you're going to grow. You're going to, it is really easy to just throw 4 orcs in a room and give them some gold. It is really easy to put a red dragon on top of the hill. And by saying easy, that doesn't mean it isn't fun. It's a go-tos, it's tropes, it's things that you are able to do, and it's relatively simple to do those things. And you're also, so basically what's going to happen is you're going to challenge yourself to create adventures and create a world and create dungeons and create situations that aren't going to just rely on, oh, well, it's magic, so it works that way. You know, and you're going to have to actually represent those and create a very real world for your players to be in. Now, your players are also going to have to grow. And this kind of stems a little bit from like a lot of the stuff I see online of people discussing D&D and what should I do in this situation, what should I do in that situation. And as for like my video I did before, is like that dungeon masters need to learn how to say no to players. It kind of adapts like that. It makes it easier to say no because they already know the world is set up to tell them no. If they want to go find a potion shop, they know that there just isn't a potion shop because there's no such thing as potions. If they want to, if they want to enchant a sword, they know they just can't because they can't enchant a sword. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that you're just not going to have access to. And if they do get access to it, it's going to be a treasured thing. It's going to be an amazingly like, oh my gosh, this is so rare and so amazing. I can't believe I got this kind of thing. You know, and it isn't just going to be, yeah, throw that sword +1 on the pile. You know, we'll bring it to the shop and sell it for 500 gold pieces or whatever. You know, you're not going to have stuff like that. Players are going to rely on their wits. They're going to rely on their creativity. They're going to rely on their narrative sense and working with the other players to come up with a challenging and exciting storyline. And that's something that's important. It's something that, like, I think that you could do this, and you could just do it for like a short, like, hey, we're going to do this for like maybe 3 sessions, 4 sessions, and we're going to see how people like it and see what people think. And then we're going to go from there. I think it also will teach your players that it is... combat's scary, right? Because they're not just going to, oh, I took 5 points of damage. Can somebody heal this? You know, you're not going to have that option. You're going to have to heal up over time. So players are going to look for alternate ways to avoid combat. You know, like hiding, talking their way out of it, negotiating, things like that. that are going to lend and like again, the DM is going to learn not to put super deadly combats out there that are going to destroy the players as well. So yeah, I mean there's a lot of different things that I think that as a DM and a player, you're both going to grow as players of D&D and as a person who runs D&D. That ultimately, when you go back to a world where magic is more prevalent, whatever system you decide to use, you're just going to be you're going to have those experiences. You're going to have the stuff you learned, and it's going to carry over. And you're going to be just somebody that can RPG better, if that's a thing. And it is a thing. It totally is a thing. And I think you'll actually you'll probably come out of those sessions with some really great stories over what happened, and some really great moments that you'll discuss. But you'll also maybe never leave, and maybe you'll move on to stuff like low fantasy gaming or something like that, and bridge that gap between high fantasy, no fantasy, and there's the low fantasy, the low magic right there in the middle, where I really enjoy the way that I play. I really enjoy those games. That's something I really like, and it's kind of. But I think I had to. If I hadn't had that campaign with no magic whatsoever, I wouldn't be able to gradiate myself to that perfect middle point, which is exactly what I enjoy running, and my players enjoy playing as well. So there you go. That's my challenge to you. You may or may not do it, but I guarantee you, give it a shot. I think you'd enjoy it. If you have any suggestions as to, this was my own, this is no anybody's suggestion. This was something I thought about and I wanted to talk about for a little bit. But if you have any suggestions for any videos, by all means, suggest away. I'd be happy to answer those as best as I can and get those done. If you have any comments or whatever, I will read every single one. I will respond to every single comment that I get. So please, well, unless I'm getting some spam lately, but I won't respond to the spam. But if you have those types of things, I will happily respond to those. And if you can hit the old like button, hit the old subscribe, hit the old bell, share this where you like, and that would really, I really appreciate that. Yeah, just happy December, I guess, holidays. I mean, I celebrate the holidays. If you don't, I'm sorry, but if you do celebrate the holidays, have a good holiday. And until next time, this is me. This was Tales from Behind the DM Screen. Just remember, be the best version of you possibly can be.